that, or do we leave that to you to cue us up?
I will bring up any comments as they come in. And we are live. Hey, folks, thanks for tuning in to the MAP podcast. I am your host, Mike Lafferty. And before I introduce everybody, here is our contractually obligated musical intro. Now, ladies and gentlemen, that delightful musical introduction assures you this is a high quality, high production values podcast. Only the finest, ethically sourced, geeky conversation for your podcast listening pleasure. Gluten-free, red dye number 5 free. And here with us tonight.
Farm to table.
Say what?
Farm to table, non-GMO.
Yeah, non-GMO. We have Mr. Ryan Costello, who is a developer on the Essence 20 RPG, and he has been a freelancer for Renegade Game Studios on many products, G.I. Joe, My Little Pony, and like the primary contributor for the book we're looking at tonight, the Transformers One supplement for the Transformers RPG. So thank you for gracing our show. We really appreciate it, Ryan.
I've been looking forward to this ever since Jacob mentioned it.
Oh, sweet. And that is my cue to introduce Jacob Blackmon, who is a frequent co-host of this show, the most handsome man in Norman, Oklahoma, and a RPG freelancer and artist in his own right. Jacob, thanks for joining us again.
Pleasure to be here.
Okay.
And to note, I want to thank Ryan for helping getting me in on this project. This was truly a delight. And for those who don't know, Ryan is one of the biggest G.I. Joe geeks that I know. So the fact that he is one of the people responsible for making the RPG, I couldn't be more happy for him.
Yeah, I've said before, when I applied for the G.I. Joe RPG designing team, I was like, this is the perfect resume. Like, I cannot imagine a person more qualified for this job than me.
Sweet. Yeah, I've been looking forward to looking at that game. I haven't had a chance yet, but
it's a good one.
Yeah, I have heard that. So let's set this up for the folks at home. Transformers One was a big animated movie, late 2024, right?
Mid 2024.
It was mid.
Yeah, it was a summer blockbuster. Well,
okay.
It was meant to, actually, I think it might have even been earlier than that. I think it would have started the blockbuster season. So I think we're talking about a May release.
I think it was released like June.
Yeah.
It was either June or July. Yeah.
Okay. September 20th, 2024.
Oh, all right. Later in the summer than I thought.
Okay.
Actually,
I remember it being earlier.
I remember it being close to the Dungeons and Dragons movie for some reason.
Well, Wikipedia is wrong sometimes. So let's just put a pin on that one, circle back. And it is the story of our friend Optimus Prime and Megatron before they were Optimus Prime and Megatron. They started off the early lore, if you will, starting off on Cybertron and how they became Transformers. And is that a fair summary, or how would you guys elaborate on that?
Yeah, well, I believe it was pitched as the first 5 minutes of the Bumblebee live-action movie, but as a full-length animated movie. And along the way, they decided that it wouldn't be so gritty as the live-action Transformers, and I think they changed the aesthetic largely so that it wasn't completely associated with that, and they had a little more freedom to tell the story they wanted. But it takes what Hasbro developed as the aligned continuity for Transformers. This is something that they developed about 15 years ago when they realized that every time they reboot Transformers, they restart the story, and there's no consistency across the entire franchise.
Yeah.
So they made this aligned continuity, which has largely just been this document in the Hasbro offices that people occasionally reference. So this was the first full time that it was just the source material for a whole new media that was supposed to spark a whole new generation of fans for the Transformers that we grew up with.
Fair. All right, let's look at the book. This is the big, beautiful supplement for Transformers One from Renegade Game Studios. And so, Ryan, you were the primary contributor. Jacob, it sounds like you have 8,000 words in this book. And
surprisingly, yes.
Can you guys tell us a little bit about what were your marching orders? Was it just, hey, we want to have a tie into the movie, or did you have something more, specific in mind for this? Or
When I was contacted by the project head, Ben, he had mentioned, "Hey, Ryan says you're a good game writer and you're really into Transformers. So I'd like to bring you onto this. Have you seen the movie?" I was like, "Yes," because I'd seen it like 3 days before Ben contacted me. So it was really fresh in my mind. And then we went through all the process of, uh, getting me signed up for a contract and NDA. And yeah, we were told to pretty much adhere to the movie as closely as possible and not be influenced by any of the other material out there, which is difficult because there's a lot of material out there, especially for fans like us. But yeah, we did our best, and I think we came out with a pretty good product here. When I was finished, Ben said, "Great job." So
Nice.
I feel very confident in what I wrote.
Well, this isn't your first Essence 20 project, right? Like nothing that you've worked on before this has been announced, but like this is, I believe, your third book, right?
This is the third book I worked on for Renegade. Yes.
Yeah. So
I haven't mentioned any of the others because they haven't been announced, so technically still under NDA for those.
Yeah, I know. It's the struggle we always face as fans and as the writers on it when we just want to gush about the things we contributed to.
When I heard about the G.I. Joe RPG, I was like, how many times did you hit yourself trying to keep quiet? Go ahead.
Yeah, so I came onto this project a little bit earlier than Jacob. I have a really great relationship with Renegade, an unheard of amount of influence for a freelancer. Basically, because I was on the original design team for Essence 20, and I contributed to 3 of the 4 core rulebooks that came out until then. I've done G.I. Joe, Transformers, and My Little Pony, and also have started to do like project management on a lot of the G.I. Joe projects and the crossover source book, the Field Guide to Action and Adventure. So Renegade really respects my opinion, and they will usually bring me in early on a project. Although this is only my second Transformers project, I just haven't worked on any of the expansions after the core rulebook. So I was raring to go with a lot of ideas for what to do with Transformers. And I had seen Transformers 1, loved it, was really excited that we were doing a source book based on it. And the marching orders I got from Ben and in the outline was we're doing a Transformers 1 campaign setting, but try and make these also options that are applicable to any Transformers campaign.
Cool.
So we did have to rehash a few things that are found in the normal role-playing game. We were asked to make this kind of like the role-playing game, but oriented more towards a lower starting level, because you want your characters to basically be starting as the cogless bots that show up in the film and go on from there.
Right, and so you're talking about like the threat levels for a lot of the named Transformers are a lot lower than how they appear in the core rulebook.
Yeah,
yeah,
because like the Megatron right up in the core rulebook, he's like threat level 20, and Starscream is close behind him at 18. Whereas the ones the most powerful thing you're going to find in this is a threat level 10 villain.
Oh, which I guess reminds me, are we spoiling the movie? Like, what do you think, Mike?
I think that is appropriate. Give me just a second so I can do something very professional here. Okay, there we go. You see there's a spoiler tag floating along the bottom.
There will be spoilers for the movie in here. All the art in this is art that was generated as promo art for the film.
All of it?
When I flipped through this, I don't think I saw any original art. I think all the art I saw in here was art that I'd seen for in promotion for the movie.
Yeah, just checked the credits, and the illustrators are listed as Hasbro artists. So yeah, other than some layout work, which was probably done by Sarah Robinson, the art director and graphic designer at Renegade, it does look like you're right. Which is probably why this book came out so much faster than the other books you were talking about, in that they didn't have to design art; they just had to locate the right art for the book.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Let me ask: did you guys do playtesting? Yourself? In this kind of young Transformers Cybertron campaign?
I
maybe
don't do as much playtesting as I used to because I've gotten so used to the Essence 20 system. Like I've written like more than 300,000 words for this system at this point in only a couple of years. So I am one of the experts on the system, and I do play in a regular G.I. Joe game, which does feature Transformers elements. So I know what is a balanced option, and I know what is expected from the franchises. So I had a good idea that most of the stuff that I was designing was balanced. And from when, any author, when they get the book back, they do the back and forth between the turnover and what came to print. And most of the mechanics that I turned over were more or less untouched.
Okay. I guess I was more wondering about the movie's got a very specific and interesting tone. It kind of balances, well, you might say high drama and betrayal and, long-standing conspiracies with sort of, I don't want to say wacky comedy, but there's a lot of, buddy comedy and, hilarious,
There's some good comedic elements in there, and this is one of the things I have to point out for those who haven't seen Transformers One. If you are basing your opinion of Transformers One and whether you saw it or not on the trailers, you are missing out on one of the best Transformers experiences out there. Everyone I know who has seen Transformers One says the trailers are trash and made the movie look like trash. The story that you get in Transformers 1 is so much deeper and so much more intense and meaningful than the trailers make it look like.
And on the subject of capturing the tone of the movie, there's a section where we're talking about gaining a TCOG, which is like, the main dramatic thrust of the movie. And I just flat out say sometimes, like, you have the choice to take a TCOG if you are okay with your character assimilating with what the other people around you are. Like, this is more mature content and more like psychology that I might have put into like a kid-focused Transformers product, which that trailer indicated this movie would be. But because I'd seen the movie and I knew, like, no, this is like smart and deep and really psychological, I felt more comfortable putting in things like, this is the option your character takes, but this is what is happening in their life if they are choosing this option. So do not take it lightly.
That's fair. Speaking of kid stuff, I'm not going to ask you guys about a Rescue Bots supplement, even though my kid would really love it.
I can tell my Paw Patrol Essence 20 anecdote if you're interested.
I am, yes.
So when we were developing Essence 20 and we were trying to make sure that it would be compatible for Power Rangers, G.I. Joe, Transformers, and My Little Pony, I just spent a weekend fleshing out, like, okay, so if this is our skeleton, how would we apply this to various other media just to, like, stress test the cross-compatibility. And so I said, like, all right, so if we were to turn this into a superhero game, this is how we would do it. If we were to turn this into a franchise that I won't name because people would be too excited that, rumors would spread. So anyway, if this other franchise, this is how we would do it. And then just to really test the limits of it, it's like, if we somehow got the Paw Patrol license and made an Essence 20 game out of it, could we do it? And very easily, things snapped into place. Origin is your dog type. Your role is what you do on the team, and influence is the same thing. It's your history and your attitude. Rescue Bots would absolutely be mechanically compatible. And from what I've done in my experience playing Essence 20 with my daughter, my older of the two daughters, it would also be fairly kid friendly. It's a fairly easy game to navigate once you figure out the differences between it and standard D20 games.
Okay, cool. I want to ask about that the secret franchise. We don't want to talk about to get people too excited.
Exactly.
But I'm a Star Wars fan, so just put that out there.
Okay. Well, I also have an Essence 20 blog called Essential Builds, where I build characters for popular culture, and I just did Darth Vader and then Luke Skywalker. And man, do I wish we had the Star Wars license for Essence 20, because it was so much fun just like forcing other options to be the Force and to be Star Wars compatible. And it's like, if we just had a rule book that was perfectly dedicated to recreating the Star Wars universe, I would have a field day.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, maybe someday. Anyway, let's talk about the book at hand, Transformers One. Jacob, can you start us off here and start flipping through it?
All right. So yeah, it's pretty much laid out like a decent opening book. For source books, this is one of the shorter source books that are out there. It's only 114 pages. but it has everything you're gonna need for playing in the Transformers One universe. The bot origin is basically you're dealing with the cogless Cybertronians. Whereas if you just want to make a regular Cybertronian, you would follow the rules in the core rulebook. And then there's all the rules in here for what to do when you gain a TCOG and acquiring that. Influences, as usual, these help explain the background of your character. Ryan did all these, so
Yeah, honestly, I did the first 2 chapters. Do you want to? Can I tag in because you're like skipping right past things that I've got all kinds of anecdotes for?
Okay, no, go ahead.
All right, so just going back to the introduction. So that opening line on Ancient Cybertron, where it says many millions of years before the Autobots and Decepticons stepped foot on planet Earth, that is a play on the opening line from the original animated miniseries, the Robots in the Sky. No, sorry. Yeah, the 5-part episode was called Robots in Skies, right? So anyway, yeah. So
it's either that or More Than Meets the Eye. It's usually one of those two.
So anyway, that like narrator that we've never really seen recreated in any other media, but that like gravelly, like when millions of years ago, like, so that was the tone I was trying to capture to try and get people that have been into Transformers for 40 years to read the entire introduction in that voice.
Oh yeah.
And so, that was the main purpose of what is otherwise like reintroducing the world of the movie as of Act 1. So there are things that happen later on in the movie, and we realize that some things we assumed about the world were misrepresented by a character in the movie. So this, right at the beginning, is just assuming like, yeah, we're in this world where this is what we think has happened, and this is the history that's set up for this specific history of Transformers. And then we've got this using the book section, which is pretty standard, just goes through some of the highlights of what's in the book. But then we've got this deviations and what ifs, which was not in my original turnover. And I have a feeling that this is just something that happened in the conversation with the Hasbro reps, where there were some things that weren't perfectly in alignment with the movie or could be alluded to, but then they don't want to get locked into any kind of continuity in case there's going to be a Transformers 1 Part 2. And so there's a couple of items in the book that have been marked with an asterisk to say that this is an extrapolation. It's a little bit beyond what you see in the movie, but it kind of fleshes out the world to make the book more usable, because otherwise, if you just had to lockstep with the movie, then you're just playing the movie, and that loses a lot of the freedom of a role-playing game.
Mm-hmm. So, moving on, we get the influences, which, like I say, are your background. And a lot of these are going to be based on the main characters who we follow. D16, Elita 1, B20,
127,
B127, and Orion.
And actually, so one little behind-the-scenes tidbit of B127's influence: the introduction for Isolated. I'd accidentally, so I had copied and pasted an influence from a previous product and just did it 6 times and then, go through it and update everything. I'd actually accidentally not updated this. So my version of it has nothing to do with being isolated. And I'm glad that an editor caught it, completely revamped that introduction paragraph because, I messed up there, and I'm glad that they caught it. But otherwise, normally the bonds where you're just kind of given like a 1-sentence in-character tag on the character's outlook. Usually when I'm designing influences, this is a drag. Like we have a chart of 12 different lines. That's the standard format for influences. And I'm usually good for 4, max 6. And then I am just dragging out other ways that you can take the theme of this and make it a tagline or a mantra for your character. Whereas in this book, these were some of the easiest influence bonds that I've ever written, because I've got this notebook just full of scratched up things that I was writing in a dark theater, just getting any kind of lines and references that I could so that I could use them for, ability names and whatnot later on in the book. And that became fuel for making sure that all of these bonds were flavorful and directly tied into the movie.
Then, of course, down here you have the minor which the minor influence, which I imagine anyone who starts as a bot will probably pick up because it'll be an easy influence to pick up for the setting, as basically all the cogless bots were forced into heavy manual labor to mine energon. So yeah,
That's why they were the real heroes.
mm-hmm. Good working class heroes. And then there's more with the autonomous bots.
Oh yeah, so those are the new factions. So something I've seen people complain about on the Renegade Discord, which I basically live on, is that factions is this option that's been introduced into Essence 20, and that Transformers is ripe for it, but has barely touched on it. So the idea of the faction is it's the team you're associated with, and all of the core rulebooks introduce the team as just part of the roles. But then as we have expanded on it, we first saw this in the Sergeant Slaughter box set, where you could change from being a member of G.I. Joe to being a member of Slaughter's Marauders. Cobra Codex came out, you can then switch to Cobra. Decepticon Directive came out, you can switch to the Decepticons. And while G.I. Joe has then gone on and then added Tiger Force and Python Patrol and the Dreadnoks and the Arashikage and all kinds of stuff from the lore, all these different teams you could be in, Transformers hasn't done that. They almost did it in the Techno-Organic Secrets, but instead they decided to make stuff like the Maximals and the Dinobots influences that kind of works like factions. And I don't know, I personally thought it was a weird direction. So I was glad when the outline included that we were just flat out doing 2 new factions for this, especially because a lot of the bonuses you get for being an Autobot involve converting, which is the word we have to use for transform for boring logistic legal reasons. Mm-hmm. So the fact that we are introducing an origin that does not convert into this book would mean that the main faction for Transformers do not apply to these characters. So yeah, autonomous bots, it flat out says like this is the Optimus. This is based on the team of Autobots the team of bots at the end of the movie that were following Optimus Prime. But even says that you can use this for an evil variation. You can easily use this as a template to do the early Decepticons version, assuming that not all the Decepticons were members of the High Guard that followed Megatron in the movie.
Yeah, as a side, I am really hoping that we can get some factions in action source books like have been done for G.I. Joe for Transformers, because there are so many different factions that can be written up for Transformers. I mean, you've got the Quintessons, mm-hmm. You've got Mech. Mm-hmm. There are so many good villains and heroes to put in the setting that haven't been touched on yet.
Well, I started out the first Junkion in the Field Guide to Action Adventure. It was Scrap Heap. And one of his abilities, I was basically figuring that if we ever designed the Junkions as a faction, one of his abilities would be the faction benefit, the faction perk. We haven't gone that direction yet. We may still in the future. But yeah, I would also like to see something like a factions in action for Transformers.
All right, let's see. Moving on.
Oh, the general perks. So,
yes,
when we got the outline, some sections are like fully fleshed out, saying like this is what you have to deliver. These are the expectations on it, and then some of them are a little more nebulous, like the general perks, where it's just as long as you deliver to this word count. I think there we go. It was 1,000 words. Give us 1,000 words of general perks inspired by the movie, and you're good to go. And one of the things I realized that the core rulebook does not work well with the Transformers movie is that the core rulebook assumes you've got passengers and you've got space inside of you, and you are trying to pretend that you are an Earth vehicle, which fulfills the robots in disguise tagline that Transformers has had since the beginning. Transformers 1, the alt modes, none of them have any kind of crew capacity or need to disguise themselves. And so I was like, okay, we need to address that somewhere. So I'm just going to make some general perks that let you swap out your crew for other abilities. And I fleshed out all the ideas I had, and it's like, oh no, this is all 1,000 words of my general perks. That is not what is expected. Some of these, taking up a good chunk of the general perks, is fine, but these being the only general perks is not to my outline. So I found ways to like minimize the text for each one, and anywhere that it was like some crossover text got moved to like a single section that just summarized them all. And yeah, I did everything I could to keep all of the feats that or the general perks feats, all the general perks that I had made, just like keep the concepts, keep the mechanics in there, but minimize the word count. So then I could throw in a couple of extra things like Handybot, which again, if you're a miner, it reflects how you go from being a miner to basically in a Cybertronian militia. And Powerful Grip, I don't remember why I designed that one, but War Mode was something that was fascinating with me the second time I watched Transformers 1. Sentinel Prime never converts. He clearly has a jet mode, but in the movie, the only thing he does is he busts out like missiles and stuff while staying in bot mode. And I was like, that's fascinating, because this is a movie about the Cybertronians who have been denied the ability to convert by this guy, and he is not even taking this privilege that he has as someone who can still convert. Like, that is, I don't know how intentional that was, or if that is just something I picked up on, but it fascinated me. And so War Mode is basically allows you to do a half conversion where you just bust out all your weapons, but you remain in your bot mode. And it was inspired by how Sentinel Prime was used in the movie.
To that, I'm gonna skip ahead just a little bit,
Okay.
because I am the one who wrote up Sentinel Prime for the book. And when you were talking about the war mode, I created combat mode for his threat. Because I hadn't seen anything that you had written. But yeah, I had noticed that Sentinel never converts, but he does assume a heavy combat mode where he gets more cannons and missiles and everything. So I made sure to put that in for his powers, that he can spend some energon and just whip out more guns and make more attacks.
So in the past, in the Factions and Actions Ferocious Fighters, Ben approached me and said during a development pass or an editing pass, he was like, I noticed that there's 2 mind control devices for giant monsters. One of them was designed by the person who did the dinosaurs. One of them was the person who did the Monstro Viper. And he's like, is there any reason we can't just make it one and apply it to both? And it's like, yeah, good catch. That just makes the book a little bit better. He missed this one. This one would have been I assume Ben's the one that developed this book, right? Yeah, he must have been.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's the kind of thing that is like, that's next level development in editing, to catch that you and I had both designed to the same goal and with very similar names, just had gone in slightly different directions. It would have been cool if they'd standardized it, but just the fact that they're both in there just shows, just some cool parallel design in our parts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know who did the equipment section, but I'm glad they included the drill as,
I did the
as
equipment
weapons.
section.
Okay.
So, let me tell you about the equipment section. So once again, I was just told to make some options based on the movie. And so the second time, because I watched the movie, actually I got free tickets from the Electric Playground. So shout out to Electric Playground. Mm-hmm. The first time I watched it was like a press screening, and then I got this job. So I was like, oh, I think Transformers 1 is leaving theaters soon. And so I got a rush to see it again in theaters with my eye for the things that were on the outline. And it was the second time around that I saw it that I was like, they don't have weapons like they do in every other thing, because they're a peaceful society. And so you don't just bust out lasers like you normally would in Transformers. And I've got to make equipment for this less equipped version of Transformers. So the main thing that we saw them use was all of these power tools. And Power Tool is a weapon that is in the G.I. Joe core rulebook, but when the equipment section was then adapted to the Transformers core rulebook, for whatever reason, it was one of the weapons that was left off the list. So my first thought was, okay, I'll include Power Tool as a weapon. And then because I had so few canonical things to draw from, I was like, all right, I am going to look up every single tool that is mentioned on the Transformers wiki, and I am going to adapt it to something they could have been using as miners on Cybertron and Transformers 1. So most of these names are not mine. Most of them come from some aspect of Transformers media somewhere out there. And the idea to say that these are not just weapons, they're tools, and so they count as a kit, and they can be used as weapons. But you'll notice all of the effects have a downshift. Normally, the main effect does not have a downshift, and the alternate effects is where you start bringing in the downshifts. But no, the idea is you are improvising, and so you constantly need to adapt, but these are giant, dangerous, Earth boring or Cybertron boring equipment, and so they can easily be used lethally. And that also, when you combine it with the Handy Bots perk, then you see that these people that are really good at using these as tools will also be the ones that know how to use these as weapons best.
Yeah. And of course, you have to have the mining jetpack for the iconic race scene.
Well, the race scene and the mining scene, like the jetpack gets a lot of use in the game. And
and of course, the climax at the end.
Yeah. So somebody on the Renegade Discord again had said, "Oh, it's just the same jetpack from the G.I. Joe Core rulebook, the jump jetpack." And I was like, "No, it is not. I built this from the ground up. I never, or as rarely as possible, reuse mechanics. I will adapt in the same direction, but like this is specific to the one that we saw in the movie." And I thought it would be fun to tap into the wearer's energon source, and that like, because it's not like a G.I. Joe putting on a jetpack. It is like linked to their backs, probably magnetically, and in theory also shares some kind of a energon charge between them. So you can spend energon to double the mining jetpack's aerial movement.
So chapter 2 here is mostly about integrating your characters and making them adaptable for group play, and aiming more primarily for a family-friendly game like Transformers One is, as opposed to basing it on heavy war themes. It's more about camaraderie and all that stuff.
Yeah,
So.
These were written for the most part by Mike Pajola. I will say that there is one person that is on the author's list, and that's Jim Sorensen, who is not on the outline. So I don't know exactly what he wrote, if he just came in and did like a significant enough pass that he got a writing credit, or if some people didn't deliver their sections, and so he was brought in to fill in the gaps. So I know what I wrote. Jacob, you know what you wrote. Everything else I'm saying based on the outline, but it is possible that Jim Sorensen also had a hand in those sections. Mm-hmm. But yeah, according to the outline, this entire thing was written by Mike.
Okay. And then we get to the Threats and Allies section. The first section here pretty much covers the main characters from the four main characters from the film. You get B-17 in both bot and all of them with their bot and TCOG modes, so you can contrast and compare the differences in their powers and abilities, which is nice and fun. D-16.
B-127. Oh, D-16. Sorry, I thought you said B-16. Sorry, go on.
D-16, happy, fun-loving guy, just wants to get along, just wants to keep his head down and do the work. And nah, it's all gonna burn.
So I think you kind of implied there were two versions of these characters, but there's three versions. There's them at the beginning of the film, them in the middle of the film when they get their TCOGs, and then who they are when the film leaves them off, and that's when they get their they get subtitled. And I did the most advanced versions of each of these characters.
Very nice.
Yeah, it was an interesting challenge because I had the two lesser versions, like the two lower threat level versions, already done. I think they were released in conjunction with the movie as like promos, and then they were included here in the book. And then Ben also wanted a third new version of each of those characters, and so I had to start with what had already been established and then build from there to level them up.
Cool. I see. Also did some contacts for them, contact information, which I love. I love the contact rules for Essence 20. They make handling NPCs unique and fun. You can bring in the most powerful NPC in the game, and it doesn't overshadow the characters because of the way the contact rules work. That
was one of the challenges from early on in the game, where we are playing in these established settings with established roster of characters, beloved characters that the players want to interact with, but the main characters have to be the player characters. So how do you have them hanging out with Optimus Prime, but not overshadowed by Optimus Prime. And we didn't have that idea when the core rulebooks came out, but within a couple of core rulebooks, one of the Power Rangers books introduced the idea that here's a contact. It's a non-combat version of a stat block that just says either make this person your friend. Here's some ways you can do it. That informs some role-playing scenes that you can have, outside of combat, and then you can potentially bring them in, have them help out a little bit. There's no rolling involved, so it's not like too much pressure on the GM. It's just like, this is my friend, this is what they are good at, and so I'm going to tap into what they are good at to make me better within the scene. And the rules have pretty much been consistent since then, but the way we've implemented it has been some of the most exciting evolution of the SS20 game since over the lifespan of the game. Both the combination of like what can make a cool contact perk and how we're formatting it, because this like combination of stat block and contact perk is kind of something that we stumbled on when we did Factions in Action Volume 2, so the Intercontinental Adventures, and since then has become the standard. Like, as often as possible, we want to make named threats also come with a contact stat block.
Yeah, I love it. And like I said, Sentinel Prime, this was the first thing I did for the book. I did my best to make him a master manipulator who also had some combat ability. And I think I succeeded on that. At threat level 10, he is the most powerful antagonist in the game. And of course, he has a nice contact build. I cheated a bit on him. His double bladed sword. I did refer to its name from an alternate source from the Transformers animated series. It's called the Primax Blade.
Wait, didn't Sentinel have a hammer in Transformers animated?
Oh no, I'm sorry. It's not the ham. I'm mistaken. It's from the Michael Bay film.
Yes, that makes sense.
The double-bladed sword used by Sentinel in the Michael Bay film was called the Primax Blade, and
nice.
that's what I called it here.
It's a cool name.
It is a cool name.
And of course, Arachnid, who is awesome and can see everything. I did not do this build. I actually did very little of the threats in this book. I pretty much did Sentinel and the Quintesson scout ship. Those are the only threats I did in this.
Kim Fransend is credited as designing the rest of them.
Kim. I love Kim's work.
I don't know if I've worked with Kim more directly than, like, we didn't really interact too closely on this book, so I don't know how much I've worked with Kim in the past.
I've worked with Kim on this book and on one other, as to my knowledge.
Okay, then I've probably worked with Kim and I'm mistaken.
It's a good bet.
Okay. So of the ones that Kim turned over, do you have any favorites?
I like the trackers. I really do, and I'm glad they included all the different types of trackers, because there are three different types. You get the regular ones who pretty much function as security. You get the elite. You get the black elite ones who are Arachnia's personal guard, and then you get the gold ones who are the elite guard of Sentinel Prime. So those are nice. And of course, the High Guard, who for those familiar with the movie, are honestly all the Decepticons. They were the elite guard of the original 13 Primes, and they were the flying characters: Soundwave, Shockwave, and all the jets, Conehead or not in variation.
It is always nice to get more Seekers statted out and just like adding variety there, because they are so much the go-to Decepticon villains. Decepticon like upper level mooks that you see all the way up to like the chief lieutenants in the Decepticon squad. So having a variety of threat levels for these flying characters really helps flesh out the encounters that GMs can plan.
Yeah, some of these I was really happy to see. We had already had some Skywarp and that, but Red Wing here. I'm familiar with Red Wing, so from the toy line, just nice to have some new builds.
Then we move on to the
and
notable
then we
Cybertronians.
move on to just regular notable Cybertronians who are going to be characters who we know. These are just their bot forms before they become Autobots.
So I happen to have the Alpha Trion toy handy right here.
Ooh.
And like, this is a unicorn, right? Like, this is a beefy, bulked up unicorn.
He's obviously supposed to be some kind of Cybertronian animal, but it's like a cat unicorn creature.
Well, he's got his front paws kind of have toes and his back paws look like hooves, but that is not a rhinoceros. Like where that horn is coming out, that is clearly the middle of the forehead.
Yeah, absolutely. And it adds to the mystical element that Alpha Trion usually has. He's a space wizard.
Well, and the fact that we had some kind of canonical establishment that in Transformers One, a beast mode is possible, inspired something that we're going to get to later on.
Yeah. So it helps add to the possibilities of what people can convert into. Okay, I'm just going to say, how the hell did Chromia beat Blur? Blur's name was in the list of the Icon 5000 racers. How the heck did Chromia beat Blur?
So I do know some behind the scenes movie about this.
Okay.
So do you recognize her face? Does that remind you of any familiar Autobots with those grills?
Yes. It looks similar to Mirage.
Yes. So Mirage was on the standings, usually pretty high up throughout the whole thing. While Chromia's name was on the list, she was usually in the middle or the bottom as they were like updating the scores. Also, Chromia appears as a bot. Like there is a bot who looks more like Chromia's standard look. So it seems like late into the production, it was decided that Mirage does not win the Icon 5000. Chromia does, and they just did like a palette swap on Mirage, and that's how she ended up winning. I agree that Blur probably should have won, but Blur, we also can assume that was either taken out by the chaos of Orion and D16, or by his own lack of attention span.
True. Yeah.
You passed over Firestar. I thought that they weren't allowed to use this name anymore, but apparently that is the name that they were going with in the scripts, and she hasn't had an action figure. But she was like Fire Nova, I think, or Nova Star. Like they had updated her name because the Marvel character had just become more significant, and there were like copyright struggles between the two. So it was surprising for me to see that Firestar got that name in this book.
Yeah. Ironhide looking up to Orion. That's unusual.
Ironhide is also given the asterisks here, and I was like, wait, why is everyone else canonical, but he's called out as what if? And I brought it up with Ben in the Discord, and Ben just mentioned that because it's just kind of looking a little bit ahead and basing this characterization a little more on previous incarnations of this character, that they decided not to make it fully canonical to the movie.
Ah, okay.
So I noticed Mike's gone.
It happens sometimes.
Okay.
If he had to drop out, it's probably something family oriented on his end. But
okay,
we are still recording. We are still live. We are still streaming. So unless that changes, we're all good, and he can come back. Everyone's favorite Jazz.
Yep.
Again, Moonracer. For those who know about the original fembots, those were great characters that didn't get much use. That I'm glad to see them.
I don't know if I've ever seen the episode. Like I know it's one episode that introduced a whole bunch of them. I should go back and check because I've probably seen it, but it's not fresh in my mind. So can't
It's
differentiate Chromia from Moonracer in most crowd shots.
Moonracer, Chromia, Alita 1, and Firestar
Yeah.
were Alita's team in one episode, and it was pretty much their testing bed to see if the audience would handle female Transformers, which gave us ultimately RC.
Mm-hmm. And Alita 1 has really grown as a character since then.
Yes, on her own.
Especially in this movie.
Prowl, love and hate relationship on me. It's like if you know him from the comics or the cartoons, yay. If you know him from the IDW, boo. Sideswipe, always a good character.
Mm-hmm.
And brother and or sister, depending on what continuity you're dealing with, Sunstreaker.
Yep. I do like that they have the same character model. Like the bots have a couple of different character models that they specifically made sure that Sideswipe and Sunstreaker were palette swaps.
Mm-hmm. And of course, we have just some regular NPCs that you could just throw in for anything. And when I remember Kim being told, make a handful. Make like 3 or 4 surface beasts, because the Cybertronian deer appear, but they wanted some others besides the deer. So made the Buzzboard, the Robo Deer, Technothylacine, and Vapor Squid.
Is Buzzbore a reference to the G.I. Joe vehicle, or is that a coincidence?
I don't know, to be honest. I would say it's a coincidence.
Yeah.
Some of these are probably not what I would do. I would have probably gone with some of the more classics. I would have probably thrown in a Turbo Fox.
Okay.
Or what were those bats called that Cup mentions in one of his stories? I forget.
Sure,
but I would have looked it up at the time. Yeah. But I would have tried to have thrown some of those in, especially the Turbo Foxes, because Turbo Foxes were specifically mentioned in Mirage's original G1 data card that he hunted Turbo Foxes back in the day. So I would have put those in there. Locations. This is the section where I had most of my word count.
Oh, really? Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and this honestly put me well out of my comfort zone. I can do threat builds and game mechanics stuff all day. You want me to expound on a world that's not my own? I was like, I'll do what I can. I kind of remember what these places looked like in the movies, but I'll do my best. Okay, I did not do the mines. The Iacon Raceway, this one was mine.
Nice.
So I talked about I discussed the Iacon Raceway, the kind of what kind of adventures you can have there, scenes and story hooks, characters that might be noteworthy, and and the Iacon Raceway actually had the largest word counts because they wanted me to include rules for running a race. So I was like, oh boy. So I did my best, and Ben really liked what I provided. So yeah,
Cool.
there's a whole thing about having a race. I wrote several NPC racers that could be used as examples to be going up against, and yeah.
So how did you approach designing basically a subsystem for Essence 20?
There are skill tests. It's a lot of skill tests, of course. Each round you need to try to advance and make skill tests to avoid colliding with other racers, obstacles, traps, and that sort of thing. You can attempt to attack, which can help to take out other racers. Ultimately, the goal is to accumulate 5,000 total movement points, because it's the Iacon 5,000,
Yeah.
before anyone else does, and that makes you the winner. and you get your movement each round. So if your movement is for the champions who are usually the fastest, that's a movement you get 60 each round.
Mm-hmm. So for every successful challenge, and depending on the degree of success, you get more movement tokens that way.
Exactly, and
Okay.
you can make skill checks to try to push yourself and get more movement. That's all that sort of thing.
Interesting. All right, cool.
Sub levels 41 through 50, where this is where we find B. This section was mine as well. It's mostly dark, it's depressing. This is where they put you when they want to forget about you. It's the oubliette. And it's all about, this is where you go here to find out the secrets, because this is where they've buried all their secrets. And it should hopefully prompt an adventure.
Honestly, there is enough thought put into the sub levels 41 to 50. Like, it's just kind of a throwaway line that there is no sub level 41 to 50. But like right there, that could have been the majority of the movie, of them just navigating this labyrinth of just hideaway space that they've created for, like you said, the bad bots, the problem bots.
Yeah, in the movie they say there's only 40 sub levels and they've been sent to sub level 50. What are the other levels looking like? So yeah, you get all that. I did not do the train station. I did not do the surface of Cybertron, but the surface of Cybertron is pretty cool. I like the idea of its constantly shifting terrain. The world transforms and converts just like its inhabitants, and that makes for an interesting place to live.
Well, and also, like, there were rumors, there was so much history built around the fact that you couldn't go up to the surface.
The Grave of the Primes, I wrote this section. This is where we find out all the nice secret history about what's going on with Sentinel Prime, and meet Alpha Trion.
Yeah.
And I insinuated that it was a network in labyrinthine caves, and there might be more in there, like Insecticon hives, and just throw in some fun things like that.
Maybe David Bowie kidnapping small children. Well, Jennifer, no, not really. Sorry.
Exactly.
We don't know for sure that Labyrinth didn't take place on Cybertron.
It's never said explicitly that it didn't, so
The High Guard hideout, I wrote this one up. The High Guard hideout is a crashed Quintesson ship.
Oh, cool.
And so
is that established in the movie, or is that something
it is. I took a look at the scene, and it is a crashed. It is one of the big crashed Quintesson ships, not a scout ship. So I insinuated that maybe there are sealed off sections inside that have strange Quintesson technologies or guardians still inside them. Who knows? It's not only a place for the High Guard to be hanging out, and you have to deal with them and what they're doing, but maybe there's some other stuff deeper in that even they haven't found out.
GoBots.
Indeed.
There's a few GoBot references in this book.
Okay.
Icon Tower, the section I wrote. This is the big T-shaped tower that is the center of Sentinel Prime's government. All his executive offices. These are going to be the people who are most under his influence.
Mm-hmm.
So things that can be happening there. The Well of Sparks. I also wrote this section. This is an area just outside of the Icon Tower, where the climax of the movie happens. It was where Energon used to flow freely, but stopped when the Matrix went missing. And I insinuate here that a lot of people who used to worship the primes as religious figures, considering they were supposed to be godlike in power. There might be factions of those who, come here and pray or hand out little flyers like, come join us at the. we can hopefully bring the Energon back if we're good enough.
That is like entire campaigns can be based around these, like the cult of the primes.
Yeah.
Like both as an antagonist or as something that you remember of.
Campaigns and variations. I did quite a bit in this, not all of it. But yeah, someone else wrote the sections of the 13 primes because they didn't really detail them enough in the movie for me to know too much.
And that is not on the outline, so this is most likely Jim Sorensen contribution, he being a lore expert.
Okay. Alternate allegiances, where we get characters like Monsterbots, Seekers, Destructicons. Yeah, these are probably more insinuating of things that can be out there that weren't really detailed in the films, but are part of Transformers lore. So how they might be integrated with Transformers One.
Mm-hmm.
Alternate origin stories. This is a section I worked on, which is because Transformers One is an origin story. These are alternate ideas that you can do. Most of these are based on comics that have previously been written. The War Within here, for example, is talking about that.
That's when Rumble and Frenzy get in a fight inside Soundwave.
It is an entirely different origin story for how the war goes and what prompts the war.
Mm.
It's more about Megatron trying to get Megatron coming into power by manipulating a certain senator and finding out that like Cybertron has rockets that he can just fire off, and by doing so, destroy entire cities.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, Shattered Glass, which
Yeah.
is the mirror universe where the Autobots are evil, Decepticons are good. The Transformers Unicron, which wasn't really touched on in one at all, but he's usually pretty integral to the Primus origin.
Mm-hmm.
And then a section on other things you can do with the campaign. So
I wrote this, the side stories and unanswered questions. So it's suggesting just different ways you can run a Transformers One campaign. The High Guard strike missions. The High Guard's talking about how they are fighting against the Quintessons on the surface and doing these guerrilla tactics. But it also, the origin of the High Guard being Sentinel's bodyguards means that there's two different points in Transformers One history that you could set a High Guard based campaign where the High Guards are the heroes.
Yeah.
And in mentioning like continuing the High Guard story, one critique I have against Transformers One, and I did love this movie thoroughly, but it wraps up the Decepticons a little bit too neatly in a bow at the end, where it's just like Megatron's kicked out, makes sense, and all the High Guard. It's like some of those were helping. Like I know there was a lot of chaos going on.
Some of those guys didn't want, but I think it's because they immediately joined Megatron in attempting to destroy the city.
Yeah.
When he called for it.
So I just open up the possibility that maybe some of the High Guard could be forgiven and that they're on their way out. Some of them could have maybe a bid for asylum.
Yeah, absolutely.
Squalid City is just saying, like, we know that Sentinel Prime is taking all the resources for himself. He's really, like, created this world where he is the king. And we see Iacon City, which is the capital and which is where he lives. And we know that there are haves and have-nots. So what is a totally different city that has no influence from Sentinel Prime? How bad off are they? And so you could send an entire campaign there. And then finally, I talk about the original beast. This is what I had alluded to earlier, that because it's established that there are beasts on Cybertron, both like animals and beast modes, how would they fit into a Transformers One campaign? Were they not in Icon City deliberately because something Sentinel Prime did, or was the camera just never focused on them, and maybe they could have been integrated elsewhere? And that wraps up the book. I got the final word. The final words being Transformers One.
The Transformers One movie, go see it. Transformers One Sourcebook. The PDF is currently available for sale at the Renegade Game Studios website.
I'm going to correct you there. So if you have pre-ordered the physical book, you get the PDF for free, and it is currently available. You can also buy the PDF, but you won't get that until the Sourcebook comes out.
Okay.
The hard copy comes out, I should say.
But I always find it good because I like hardback books. So
yeah, normally I would be able to reach right here and grab any number of S20 books, but I've just recently moved them to a shelf in a more common area because why do I have books here when I'm on my computer and I'm just using all my PDFs?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I do think one of the great things about Transformers One is that it really covers something that the core rulebook doesn't. The core rulebook is built around the basic premise of being robots in disguise on Earth, even though for a lot of people, Transformers is much more than that, and there's a lot of the star, the adventures out in space, and the culture of Cybertronians. And so this both serves as a Transformers One campaign setting if you want to specifically be set in the world, or if you just want to have more Cybertron influence in your campaign. Everything in here still applies. What's the stuff that's listed as campaign ideas can just become the history of your campaign, and you can use this at any point in any Transformers timeline.
Mm-hmm. Cool. And in case you're not watching this and you're just listening, go to renegadegamestudios.com, do a search on Transformers One, and you can still pre-order the book right now.
Yep.
So, Ryan, it was a pleasure to have you on, sir.
Thank you very much. This was great.
Jacob, it is always fun to talk to you, sir.
I had a great time today.
And
I've been thrilled about this game because Transformers was the first genre I absorbed as a child. I was 7 years old when they came out. So the fact that I was asked to work on a major IP and it was Transformers is a dream come true. And I'm very thankful to Ryan and Ben for giving me this experience.
Well, thank you. You burned it. You basically did what I did. You proved that you are a passionate fan about this brand and a committed game designer who has been working towards, getting the credits out there and just contributing to the fan base. So I was more than happy to bring you on. I try to get people onto these projects that I know will be good on the projects. Some of it is doing them a favor, but it is also, they have to earn that. I cannot just give anybody an invitation, and you have absolutely earned the right to be working on these books.
Thank you.
Cool. Well, hey, Ryan, hope to have you back at some point in the future.
Sure. Keep me in mind.
Will do. And everyone watching, thanks for checking us out tonight. And we will see you next time on the BAMF Podcast.
Have a good night, everyone.